Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed Asabdullah, and you're listening to the Freelance Canada podcast. Today, more Canadians than ever are starting a freelance business and earning their financial freedom in the process. On this show, I interview Canadian freelancers and industry experts about the latest trends, ideas, and strategies that can help you accelerate the growth of your business. If you've been enjoying the show, please do me a favor and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. On the show today, I'm going to talk to Eman Zabi. Eman is the founder of The Scribesmith, a copywriting agency that specializes in research-based strategy and conversion copy for digital products. Eman is also the creator of the Conversion Kits, brainstorming decks to help entrepreneurs increase conversion, as well as Terrain, an online course marketplace that hosts and markets high-quality courses for entrepreneurs. In this episode, Eman and I talk about how Canadian freelancers can launch self-liquidating offers to generate more leads for their business. So let's get to it. How are you feeling overall?
I feel pretty good. I'm excited to talk about this. I don't think I've spoken about this on any podcast so far.
Oh yeah? I'm keen to see how this goes because I actually am quite interested in learning this since I didn't know there was a name for this. So the fact that I'm learning this, it's going to be pretty fun. So before we get started in anything else, let's start by talking about what is it that you do as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So at this point, I'm running a copywriting agency, The Scribesmith. We have a couple of different sides to the business. We have like an e-commerce side. We have a platform that we're in the process of developing. And then, of course, we do lots of one-on-one client work with people who are either launching courses or memberships. But this is like a few years in. I definitely started off, fresh grad, no real experience in the industry, was unemployed. And that's kind of how I got my start in this space.
Right. And when you did get started as a fresh grad, what was the driver for going the freelance route? What made you decide to, not only get into it, but then also stay in it?
Well, it was a little bit of an accident. I think most people kind of stumble into this industry. I was unemployed. It was really hard to get a job at the time. I had probably the most useless degree on the planet, political science. Super interesting. I loved every minute of it. But oh my goodness, it's impossible to get a job with that degree. So I started blogging, as many of us do. And I was sent a link to the Copywriter Club podcast. And I'm like, oh, this is a thing I could do. And it kind of just went from there. I did end up getting a full-time job as a writer a few months into the process, but I knew that I would be leaving the country in like 8 or 9 months. This is before I moved to Canada. And I wanted to see if I could build my freelance business up on the side. So I was kind of using my full-time job as like my primary income source. And I would come home from work and then work till like 1 or 2 a.m. on all of the little bits and pieces you needed to seem like a legitimate business. Because I had a lot of like, oh, I'm too young to be doing this kind of stuff. So I wanted to seem as legitimate as I could possibly seem. So I had like a great website. I had my early funnel set up. I was investing in my business already. And I tried to have like everything ready to go by the time I moved to Canada. And that's pretty much what I did.
And where did you move to Canada from?
From Qatar.
Oh.
Which is a tiny, tiny country in the Middle East.
Yeah. So let's look at that. So you started the freelance business in Qatar, or
yes,
you found clients that were in Qatar, or were they already in Canada?
It was next to impossible to find clients in Qatar at that time because freelance just wasn't really an accepted concept there. I was finding clients in the US primarily because the exchange rate was great. And I did have 1 or 2 Canadian clients.
Awesome. Okay. So, and you knew you were going to move to Canada, or I guess how did that come about?
So I was in the process of applying for immigration at the time. I had just kind of received my documents and I had about 8 or 9 months to kind of get ready to make the move. And I used those 9 months to build up the business before I did. And by build up the business, I really had like very unrealistic expectations of how much it would actually cost to live in Canada. I was making maybe like $1,000, $1,500 US dollars a month, which is really not enough. But I had savings from my full-time job, which allowed me to kind of make that transition a little bit smoother. And then I went from like making a few $1,000s a month to making enough to pay like a full-time team in a couple of years once I moved here.
And earlier you mentioned, you built your website, you wanted to look legit, and you talked about building funnels. Could you dive into that a little bit more, please?
Sure. So I did a lot of testing around funnels. So I did everything from like the really basic opt in to welcome sequence to like small offer at the end to more complex funnels. I was really looking at what other people were doing in the industry and trying to deconstruct it and figure out what I could apply to my own business. And one thing that we started doing fairly early on was looking at self-liquidating offers, which is still a big part of like our own business strategy, but it's also a big part of what we recommend to our clients because it's such a neat way of building your list for, well, essentially for free because the way self-liquidating funnels work is that like it's an offer that you sell to cold audiences. And the idea is that the cost of getting it out in front of that audience is then recouped by the offer sales. So for example, if you're like putting $1,000 into your Facebook ads and you have say a $50 offer, then if your SLO is working, then you need to make like at least 20 sales and then you've recouped your money, but you've also brought in new leads into your funnel. And the best way that like I recommend to do it is to kind of set it up as a tripwire. So you're getting free leads in the front end and then they then see like your paid offer right after. And then they're sent, then they just get added to your email funnel. And that's kind of how those were some of the early funnels that we set up. Well, I set up, it was just me back then. Yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of questions here. Um, so, how did you even think to be like, oh, I'm going to set up, this email opt-in, and I'm going to have this funnel, and I'm going to go and deconstruct other people's website? Like, where did all these ideas even come from? What was even the end goal that you were trying to accomplish there?
I probably should say something along the lines of like, I was being really strategic about this and blah, blah, blah. But no, I was just really curious about how it was working for other people. I guess just I'm very inclined towards like experimentation in general. And I'm like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I've learned something. So I was just looking and reading and trying to understand as much as I could about the industry. I was listening to at least like 3 hours of podcasts a day because I had a crazy commute. And every time I would like something would stick out to me, I would scribble it down and see if there was a way I could test it in my own business. I tried everything from like those 5-day mini email courses. And I did that very, very early on into my freelance career when I had no business teaching anyone anything. But I learned how to set all of that up, how to run like small scale ads to that and all of that. So I was just piecing together as much like information about the industry as I could and finding out like, and every time I saw someone doing something interesting, I would like go dig into their funnel. I would go sign up for it and just like creep on their list and figure out what they were doing right. Yeah.
And okay, so you came across self-liquidating offers. Did you even know that's what they were called? Or was it, I don't know, like were you just on Twitter and somebody's like, self-liquidating offers, here's your funnels. And you're like, that sounds really cool. Like, how did it all come about?
I think someone mentioned it on a podcast, or maybe it was some free webinar I had signed up for. It could have been Bushra Azhar. I'm not very sure. I listened to a lot of her stuff early on because she was based in the Middle East and she was brown as well. And she was like this incredibly successful person. I think she was making like at the time a few $100,000 a month. And I'm like, I would like to make that in a year.
Yeah.
Like, so I tried to learn everything I could about the way she was doing. And she had some really, really clever funnel strategies, very ostentatious, which is kind of her brand. It's very loud, but it worked for her. And I wanted to kind of understand. And I'm like, if Bushra is like on the loud end of the spectrum, I'm like on the opposite side. I'm like the quietest, mousiest person you'll ever meet. So I'm like, how do I take Bushra's strategy and then kind of make it my own? And it was sort of this journey of experimenting with it and kind of figuring out how to make that work. And in the process of kind of understanding the self-liquidating offer, I ended up like, you need for example, for a self-liquidating offer to really be effective, you need to understand the context in which the offer is kind of being made. Like, what is the suite of services that you currently offer? And you need to find an offer that naturally kind of lends itself well to those upsells. It really required me to take a big step back and understand what I was driving my leads towards.
let's start understanding self-liquidating offers, right? Earlier, you
Mhm.
mentioned that it's essentially an offer where you can essentially break even, if not sometimes even make a little bit of profit. But that's not the goal of the self-liquidating offer. It's that the relationship or it's that lead that you get as a result of it. Did I capture that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. And so then now that I have this email or person that's in my funnel, I guess what am I leading them to? Like, walk me through the process of building this funnel. What does that look like? Or how should people think about building theirs?
Sure. So you need a couple of things in place first. There are a couple of different types of self-liquidating offers. I prefer the one that has a tripwire in it because you get more leads for your dollars. So I'm gonna talk about that one. It's a slightly more complicated version, but essentially you need an offer, you need an opt-in, and you need a welcome sequence that kind of comes after it. And of course, you need ads. So you set up ads that run to your opt-in page. And then once people have opted in, it redirects them to a landing page where they then see your offer. And your offer needs to be something that's relatively low cost, but has really high perceived value so that it's an impulse buy for them. And once they purchase that offer, both sets of people who opted into your page and people who purchased the offer go into your welcome sequence. And then you can upsell them, a higher ticket offer at the end of it. But the idea is that the cost is the amount you're making off the sales of that offer should be enough to offset the cost of your ads. And that's essentially it.
Okay. So I'm going to say it back to you just to make sure I'm learning. And as a result, I'm also summarizing it. And those learning are also like, no, you got it wrong. And listen to her. Okay. So I have something that I'm offering. And let's say in the case of Benji, right? Let's use Benji as an
Mhm.
example. So let's say I come out with an online course. Is that course my offer? Or do I create, let's say, like a downloadable PDF white paper or something? And that's my offer to get them into my funnel. And the course becomes the upsell.
Well, it depends on the cost of your course. So if your course is a
Okay.
couple of $1,000s, then I would
Mhm.
make it the upsell at the end.
Okay.
For a course, I would really recommend doing like a PDF checklist as your opt in and then having something a little bit meatier as
Mhm.
your SLO offer. So, like maybe it's a $99 masterclass or something like that, like a recording that they can access or something along those lines. So they sign in, like opt in for your PDF, and then they get redirected to your masterclass, and then they purchase. Whether they purchase or not, they go through that same welcome sequence, or if you want to be fancy, you can segment that and have two different versions of it. And at the end, you upsell them something else. So the upsell and whatever money you make off the upsell is just pure profit because the masterclass sales have offset the cost of your ads.
Okay. So the way that an SLO funnel works is that I have three key things that I can offer my potential audience slash buyer. And in the case of Benji, for example, I might have a spreadsheet to manage your finances, right? And that's the
Mhm.
free offer that you have to opt in to my email to download, right? And then once you land on the thank you page after you've downloaded the spreadsheet, you then see a offer for a pre-recorded video of a managing your finances course, or could be something else, but let's call it a video course
Mhm.
or something of that sort. And then that one has a higher price item or has a price item.
Mhm.
And after that, once they kind of go into that funnel, I then sell them on a like the larger course or a freelance finances bootcamp program. Have I gotten all
Yep.
the pieces right?
Yep. That's exactly it.
Okay. So is that spreadsheet that people are downloading, is that one free or does that also have a price to it?
Well, no, that one's free. You can do this in two different ways. You can have your paid offer be the only offer that you kind of have on the front end, but that means you're limiting the number of emails you're collecting in the process.
Mhm.
But if you have like a free offer on the front end, you get more emails coming in. And then you will have a percentage of those people purchase your paid offer. So that kind of works in that way. You get more emails for the same amount of ad spend, essentially.
Right. And then I guess the question becomes, what am I doing with all of these emails that I'm collecting through that free lead gen?
Well, ideally, you also have your welcome sequence set up. So, your welcome sequence, so these are cold emails that are coming in. And the purpose of your welcome sequence is to warm them up, establish your authority, and really start addressing their pain points and then getting them primed for you to make an offer. So, maybe that's if you're a freelancer and doing like one on one service work, that could be like one of your high ticket offers that you're getting them ready for. If you have a course, like you mentioned, then that's, really starting to address the pain points that that course will solve and then starting to slip in, say, some social proof, maybe mention it a few times. It's not a super hard sell until, say, the last few emails. If people don't end up purchasing that course, then they just, get added to your regular newsletter list. You should have a newsletter. You should be keeping your list for them. Because if you don't do anything with those emails that you're collecting, they're going to forget that they signed up for your offer. And once you kind of, even though they're in your funnel, if you aren't nurturing them, you lose relevance and they're going to unsubscribe when you suddenly wake up one day and decide to try and sell something.
Okay, I am excited. You can't see my face. uh, and I have a lot more questions. So, first, let's start by understanding how you currently have a SLO set up for your business.
Sure. So, we actually did something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually have an SLO running for any of our digital products. What we do have is one running for our physical products. So we actually created these launch planning and strategic copywriting decks, like brainstorming decks. And we've been experimenting with different ways of kind of getting them out there. And since our audience is primarily people, who are building these funnels and trying to launch courses and trying to really sell some kind of digital offer, we figured that this would be something that's interesting and a little bit out of the box because everyone's seen the PDF downloads, everyone's seen like the spreadsheets and the webinars and things like that. We wanted to create something that was a bit of a pattern interrupt and something that had really high perceived value because it's, something beautiful, if I say so myself, and it's a physical product that you're actually getting in the mail. So that's kind of what we did. And once people purchase those, they get into our funnel and then they are upsold a consulting call. So this is a simpler SLO than the Tripwire one that we just talked about because there's just one thing. You see the ad for the deck, you purchase the deck, you get added to our funnel. And the reason we have this is because we have other list building ads running as well. So our focus here was just to bring in sales because, I have a box of like 1,000 something decks in my garage and they need to move. So yeah, that was essentially it. So they get added to our email funnel and then they get sold a consulting call. After the consulting call, they have the option to, again, purchase some of our higher ticket, one-on-one, long-term kind of client work packages. So essentially we're selling like a $70 deck and then upselling it to a $750 call and then upselling it to, say, a $10,000 project at the end of it. And that's kind of how it works. But our acquisition cost is still like, the $10 it cost us to get that one lead for the deck.
Yeah. So, okay. And hold on, with every upsell, I just feel like you're adding another zero at the end.
Yeah.
So, okay, $70 turned into $700, and then that turns into like $7,000 or about 10,000. Okay. And earlier, you also mentioned something about a Tripwire. What is that?
So the Tripwire is the second offer that you're seeing. So like if we take your example, it's that video, that pre-recorded video, that would be the Tripwire. Because like it was triggered by the act of people opting in for your free offer. And that's kind of the Tripwire offer there. Some people like to make it time sensitive as well. So like, you can really up the urgency with that. That component of the SLO is called a Tripwire.
Okay. So that video course or, pay to watch this video, essentially, that part is a Tripwire.
Yes.
Okay. So in your case, your deck is the initial offering, and then the consulting call, would that be your tripwire or is that your
Yeah.
upsell?
So that's our upsell. We actually don't have, for this particular offer, we aren't using a tripwire anymore because we figured like the decks were enticing enough to work well on their own. But if you have something that's more common, like a PDF,
Mhm.
then I would recommend having that extra layer in front of it to kind of. So, okay, let me put this way. The first step, the first thing in your SLO is bait, right? It has to be something that can hook people. If your paid offer is good enough to hook people on its own, then you don't need an additional opt-in layer. But if it's something people are more used to, like, webinar or spreadsheets and stuff like that, then it's helpful to have a free layer to attract people first.
Okay. So essentially, is that if it's common enough where I could download this PDF here, or I could go somewhere else and or just Google for like spreadsheets, then it's not something I'm willing to pay for and don't even try to do it. Instead, use that as a lead gen in a way.
Exactly.
And then because it's free, you're going to add a tripwire to your terminology.
Yes.
And that is that on the thank you page, I'm going to show them something that is a paid offer. And that could be a time sensitive offer, if anything. So that paid offer still is not too expensive. Still, I'm assuming probably under $100
Yep, generally.
generally. And then that tripwire or that paid offering, whoever purchases that then gets added to the funnel of then being upsold to other offerings that you are providing. Do I have that right?
Yep. Yep, that's exactly it.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'm getting a hang of this. Thank you. Thank you. Now, as you've been setting all these different funnels as part of your SLO structure, what have been some challenges that you've run into?
So testing is huge for this, like especially with Facebook ads, like, oh my goodness, you have to find like the right combination of copy with imagery, with targeting, and it's really, really hard. I burnt through so much money trying to do this myself. And then I just decided that I was going to hire somebody and have them take care of it for that, really the Facebook ads component part of it. Things change at Facebook so frequently that even if you've taken a couple courses on it, if you aren't staying up to date, you aren't really going to get great results. Now, when I first started kind of dabbling with SLOs, this was like 2017. It was definitely a lot easier back then. Even someone with as little experience as me was able to kind of get results. But right now, if I was attempting to do it, I would just save myself like all of the effort and the money, and I would just give it to an expert and be like, please, can you set the ads up for me? And yeah, so that's kind of it. That part of it, I think, is tricky, and you need to really know what you're doing on the ad side of it, or else you're going to lose money in the process. You also really need to be patient because you have to run. I mean, if you want to do this right, then you need to be open to like optimizing your funnel at different points. You have to be willing to, get into the data and look at like this landing page is converting at whatever percent, this isn't converting. How do I need to change the hook on this page to get conversion up? Maybe the button needs to be brighter. Maybe the button needs to be bigger. It's really kind of taking ownership of the whole funnel and being patient as you test. And testing takes money. So it's something that I would recommend for people who are a little bit further along in their freelance career. So if you have a little bit of like, honestly, like a burn budget that you can use for experimentation, this would be a good place for it to go. Because once it's done right and once it's set up, it definitely pays off. It's just the initial testing stage can be painful.
I have so many thoughts, and I'm now making sure I articulate all of them. I suppose one thing as I'm listening to this, I'm trying to understand, hey, this sounds good. I have an idea of, let's say I'm a designer, freelance designer, and my larger upsell offering is that I'm going to offer my services as a designer to a company or to other designers or something of that sort, right?
Mhm.
But then the service before that is maybe I help do an audit of someone's brand or something of that sort.
Mhm.
And then the offering before that is maybe like a downloadable, or maybe it's not downloadable, maybe it's something I buy, which is that it's a pack of a Figma UI kit where people can sort of get started with their UI design for their app or something, right?
Yeah.
So there's three offers right there. Does that so far seem in line? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
So now that I know that I have this sort of set up in these three offers, where do I get started? Like, what tools do I use? What am I paying for? What should I not be paying for? What should I do?
So the only tool that you'll really need is something to post the landing pages on. So you can use Unbounce, you can use Lead Pages, whatever you usually use. Lead Pages is probably the easiest to use if you're newer to this. So you need Facebook ads, imagery for that you can make on whatever your image platform is of choices, Canva all the way. And then you need something for your landing pages, and then everything else is over email. So really that's all you need. And of course, I mean, I'm sure you have something you need Stripe to integrate with Lead Pages so that, you can take money, but that's essentially it. It's very simple from like the tech setup point of view. It's really, there isn't much. It becomes challenging on the strategic point of view. So you need to be able to kind of take a step back and look at what the data is telling you and then make informed decisions based on that. For that reason, I really recommend using a tool like Hotjar. So you get heat maps of your landing pages so you can see if people are getting distracted by your design, or if there's if buttons aren't being clicked. And I've seen conversion go up significantly when you refer to the heat maps and things like that. And it's been as simple as changing the color of a button, and then we've seen conversion spike. So it's really being very hands-on with that data and looking at looking at parts of your funnel in isolation to see where the problem is, but also taking a step back and looking at it as a whole.
Right. And when you say email, am I using my personal email? Am I using MailChimp, or what are you using?
Right. Sorry, I should have said, please don't use MailChimp. Please don't use MailChimp.
Oh, no.
Definitely not your personal email either. I highly, highly recommend ActiveCampaign, because when you're doing any sort of funnel work, it just gives you the most amount of data. It gives you the most flexibility with the kinds of funnels that you can set up. It can be a little bit intimidating at first, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, but the flexibility and it's just a very robust platform. And there's so much you can do with it that you just can't even dream of doing on MailChimp or even ConvertKit for that matter.
Wow. Those are some fighting words. Okay. I mean, MailChimp, if you're listening, still love you.
Sorry. Well, MailChimp is great if you're starting out. I will say that. But if you have any sort of complicated funnels, really, you should be on ActiveCampaign. And they're not paying me to say this. They should hire me, though. I gush about how great they are.
Right? At least have an affiliate code or something.
I know.
So let's go back to our example of this freelance designer, right?
Right.
Their first offering is a UI kit that someone's going to pay to download. And they create a website using whichever tool they're familiar with. And they have that offering. Stripe is connected, and it's connected in the backend in terms of the welcome email that you mentioned to ActiveCampaign, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So now I then learn how to run ads on Facebook, or I ask around for somebody who can help me run ads on Facebook to then drive traffic to that web page. Do I have that part right?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. So now I'm spending money so far, and I'm spending quite a bit because those Facebook ads are not cheap. So people come to my site, and then let's say they decide to go ahead and pay for this sub $100 product, this UI kit. And then when they purchase it, I show them a thank you page. And on that thank you page, is that now where I have the offer to do an audit or consulting of their existing app design? Or does that not come because this is a paid offer right now?
Well, it depends on how much your audit costs. So if it's a significant jump from your UI kit, which I'm assuming it would be, then I would recommend it come post emails because you have time to kind of establish your authority a little bit more and warm the audience up. If you do want to put something on the thank you page, that's when I recommend having so in the UI kit, I would put that on the thank you page and then have I don't know, like a 15 mistakes that can kill your design in 2020 PDF on the front end or something like that. Something, it's bait. It is bait, but the idea is that you also deliver on okay, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second, but clickbait gets a really bad rep, but it's important to have something that can hook your audience. It's incredibly important that you actually deliver on what you're promising. If you're using some really enticing copy and like a fun headline thing, you have to deliver. But clickbait on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm just going to put that out there. So you need something that is attractive enough to stand out in the noise and actually stop people mid-scroll, get them to click through. It's a trade, right? You're providing something in exchange for their email address. So you need to make it look as enticing as possible. And sometimes that means it has to be for free. So you're giving them some really valuable feeling free PDF, and then they get onto your UI kit thing. They pay for it, and then they go through your emails. And then I guess an audit is like $1,500 ish.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do that. Yeah. $1,500. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say 10 days of emails, and then you make that offer and you should be in a good place. I will say that some people make this mistake with welcome sequences where they drag it out a little bit too much. So, a welcome sequence that spans over 2 months and then you make your offer is generally a bad idea. You want to make the sale within, say, the next 2 weeks or so while people are still familiar with you and your work.
Right. And, that problem maybe that sort of led them to pique their interest is still relevant enough that they're like, actually, I'll just go ahead with this solution that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So now I have my offer. I've got my PDF. I've got my UI kit. I put them through this welcome email sequence that's no longer than, let's say, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So is it at the end of my email sequence, like in the last email sequence, that I make my pitch about like, hey, if you need help with your app audit or whatnot, book me for $1,500. Is that it?
Well, you definitely want to make a harder sale than just that. You want
I hope so.
Hey, if you need help, I'm here. We definitely don't want to do that. I would say maybe the last 3 to 4 emails, and I would make it a time-sensitive offer. So say your audit is usually $2,000, but if you purchase right now, it's $1,500 and have some of that urgency going. And if it's a service that you're providing, then there's also like a natural cap because you can only do so many at a time.
Right.
So if you only offer, say, 2 to 3 a month, make sure you mention that. Just urgency and scarcity and perceived value are the 3 key things that you kind of need when you are trying to push an offer that isn't an impulse buy. At $1,500 for most people, that's not an impulse buy, unless you're dealing with corporations because $1,500 is pretty much their lunch budget. But yeah.
Got it. Okay. So then let's say the book my consulting session and I'm kind of just going through and helping to do that audit that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my $1,500. Then what? Do I just be like in the middle of that consulting? I was like, by the way, you should hire me for $10,000.
Well, no.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't offer everyone who takes your audit your $10,000 offer because it depends on whether that offer is actually a good fit for them. Do they actually need the services that you provide at that point? Is it something that is realistic for them at that stage of the business? Because it's less about trying to fit everybody into your take everybody forward into the next stage of your funnel. At that point, it's more about, is this the right next step for your client? And if it is, then you tell them why it's the right next step. And then you offer to follow it up with a formal proposal. And the benefit of that is that normally, if you've done an audit already, then you have a really good understanding of how their business works. So you can make a very tailored proposal that just spells out where you're going to get them the ROI, the benefits, and all of that. And that makes it it makes it easier to close like a higher ticket deal as well. And because they have this experience of working with you, it makes them less, like, the risk is lower in their eyes because they know, you're the real deal and all of that. And yeah, it makes it easier to close those $10,000 deals, but it also makes it incredibly important that you knock it out of the park with that audit. Like, your goal going into that audit is to like delight them. You need to blow their minds in that audit if you're gonna like upsell something for 10 grand.
Okay, this is interesting because in a way, we're talking about funnels, but it's almost me building a pipeline for clients for myself while making additional funds along the way. Because I think what's interesting that you said is that you're essentially screening out people that you don't want to work with, right?
Oh yeah.
That's what the audit is doing. The audit is actually somebody paying you to see if you want to work with them.
Yep.
That's what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a paid discovery call, really.
That is dope. Okay, I like that. What? Okay. Okay. Damn. Oh. How do you feel about all this?
I mean, I can see why it would probably feels overwhelming to people hearing this for the first time, but I promise it's worth the effort. I promise it's worth the effort because like once this is set up right, it is a machine that brings in leads. And I mean, the ROI on this is fantastic. Imagine paying a few bucks for a Facebook ad, a lead coming in through a Facebook ad, and then eventually being able to upsell them into like big ticket projects. Like the biggest we have done through this kind of funnel has been around $30,000. And I mean, all of that initial front end effort pays off in spades.
I guess as we think about this, and it sounds amazing, don't get me wrong, because it's something I've been thinking about and experimenting next month, surprisingly as well, or not so surprisingly, I don't know. But nonetheless, I guess I'm interested to see, in your experience at least, when does it not make sense for somebody to set up a SLO for themselves?
Well, if you only have very high ticket offers and you don't want to devalue your brand by having lower priced offerings at all. Like, for example, if you're going after like the Nikes and the Patagonias of the world and you're dealing with them and not like agencies, then Nike isn't going to opt into your free offer and go like that's not going to happen. So like it depends on who your audience is. So if you only have like very high ticket offers, very like high profile clients, and you only take a limited number of clients at a time, then this is probably not a good fit for you. If, for example, if you only need one client a month or two clients a month at like $5,000 a month, then this probably isn't the best fit for you, especially if you don't want to be doing like that mid offer at all. It's also probably not the best fit if you haven't sat down and done the work about figuring out like your own offer funnel. So like what your high ticket offers are, whether you have like your mid-range offers and like what your gateway drug offer essentially is.
Oh man, I like this so much. And it reminds me of something I've been learning through a friend of mine who's going through the No Pants project, because they have essentially this model. And I just didn't know that that's what it was called. It was self-liquidating offers. So I'm super excited to be learning about building these funnels because I think it's so cool and so awesome. So as we come, to a close, I'd love to know what advice you have for Canadian freelancers.
Show up like a strategist in your business. I think that's kind of the most important part. Look for opportunities to test, optimize. That's it. And always charge in US dollars, you guys. Like that exchange, you don't want to be missing out on that exchange rate.
Right.
Just saying.
Right.
Just saying.
So as we wrap up, I'd love to know where people can find out more about you and your work online.
Well, the best place to find us is one of our 3 websites. So scribesmith.co is kind of our home base. It's where all of the agency stuff is. If you're interested in learning about funnels and things like that, we've got lots of blog posts on it. So that's probably a good place to check out. If you're interested in poking around and looking at the decks and testing our own offers, theconversionkit.com is where to go.
Awesome. Well, Eman, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from you. I really appreciated learning about SLOs, and I can't wait to apply those to Benji as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's our show for today. If you liked Freelance Canada, then be sure to subscribe to our newsletter by visiting freelancecanada.fm. You'll get access to all of my personal notes, as well as book recommendations about the topics discussed in the episode. Now, you will not find any of this on our website, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. As with most podcasts, you can listen to every episode through Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It would mean a lot if you could leave us a 5-star review. It would mean even more if you shared our podcast with another freelancer so it can help them in their journey too. Finally, if you're tired of leaving money on the table because you don't know which of your expenses you can write off, then sign up for Benji. You can start your 90-day free trial by visiting betterwithbenji.com, because freelance life is better with Benji. Thanks for listening.